Have you watched the most recent couple of monologues from The Late Show?
I think I watched Thursdays. The last one I watched was Thursday, so I didn't watch last night's.
Was that the one? I think it might have been before that too. There was one recently where after the monologue, you talked about, or it may have been during the monologue, they talked about doing that night number of shows tied the number of shows he did for the Colbert Report.
Oh, I did not see that.
Okay. It may have been after the monologue. I don't remember for sure now, but it was within the past week.
Well, I started recording it on its channel and watching it on YouTube via YouTube TV. So, the only episode I watched was Thursdays. So must have been before that, or unless it was last night's.
It wasn't last night's, because last night he had Trevor Noah on, which was actually an excellent bit as well.
Oh,
I won't spoil it.
I will have to check that out. So he's tied the number of shows now.
Well, he's now surpassed, because that was at least more than one episode ago.
Yeah. I was right. I was close.
Yep. I thought that was timely and interesting because we talked about it recently enough.
Yeah. Yeah. I did a thing.
Is this like leading into a show did a thing, or keep it out of the...
No, it's leading into a 2-minute talk about a thing I did.
Gotcha. What did you do?
I did buy a Vision Pro with the intent purpose of selling it.
Yeah, when you sent me the screenshots about storage, I kind of had a feeling you were planning to go through with that idea.
Yeah,
I thought about it.
You know, it was a lot easier than buying an iPhone.
I know a lot of people complain about buying an iPhone, but I've never had. Well, in the past 5 years, I've never had a difficult time getting an iPhone.
I was going to say, if I had thought about it, I probably could have gotten like 3 of them on delivered on launch day, because you could only like put one in a bag at a time, because they want you to scan your face each time, so that you get the right light seal and the right headband and so forth.
Interesting.
But yeah, it was a lot less. It was a lot fewer screens, because I also, I don't have any optics that need. I don't have to put in a prescription. I don't have any optics consideration. I'll just be like, I don't wear corrective lenses, and I don't have monovision. Like, there's a question in there: do you have, basically, do you have vision out of one eye? And the answer is no. So, I got 3 preliminary questions, and then it's like, how much storage do you want? When I sent you that message, I was like, I thought that they had lowered the cost of storage specifically for the Vision Pro, but then I went back and I realized, no, it's the same ridiculous price for storage.
Yeah, it's just, I know, because at first I thought maybe the tiers were better priced, but then I went back and double checked and looked at the amount of storage, and it's like, oh no, it's just
no, it's exact same tiers. Either way, either outcome, it's both infuriating. Both out. I was like, I don't have to correct this right now because it's still infuriating. And other things that are infuriating in my life have been, some time ago I talked to you about Ozempic, trying to get a prescription for Ozempic, but I couldn't because I don't have diabetes. But I recently found out that our insurance covers so Ozempic is not the only game in town, and there are a number of other drug manufacturers that manufacture a GLP-1 agonist that they'd have the version for, or the dosage for type 2 diabetes, and then they have a dosage for weight loss, and it has a different name. And so found out recently that our insurance at the end of last year started covering it, and so I was like, cool, I want to go get let me get it. Let me get a prescription. So I talked to my doctor, and he's like, yeah, come in. And well, actually, first I called the company that manages prescription drugs, and they're just like much of the workforce in the United States, it's a bunch of gatekeepers. At the end of the day, it's a bunch of gatekeepers. It's like you call in. I mean, okay, so I call in and I want to ask some questions. My question was, all right, what is the process for this? Like what do I need? What do I need to do to successfully have a prescription filled and covered by insurance? And how much is it going to cost? Well, I don't know. That's the answer. The answer I got was, I don't know how much it's going to cost. You just need to have your doctor submit a prescription to us. Well, I was like, well, when he submits a prescription to you, what are you going to do to calculate how much I owe you? I don't know. Well, who does know? Just send in the prescription. Okay, is there anything else that I need to know? No. You just need to ask your doctor to send in a prescription. Okay, so I send a message to my doctor, and my doctor's like, yeah, let's, he asks, it's like, because there's two on the market. The weight loss version of Ozempic is called Wegovy, and then there's another weight loss, same thing, for weight loss, called Zepbound, and its diabetes counterpart is called Mounjaro. And my doctor asked me, well, which ones are covered? And it turns out that both are. And he's like, cool, come, make an appointment and come in. And I was like, all right. So I go, like, working with a doctor's office was really easy because I can send messages to my doctor through their online portal, and they can tell, within a few hours, like back, a few, like 3-4 messages back and forth. He tells, I told him what he wanted to know, and he told me what I needed to know, and then I was able to make an appointment through the portal, and it was like super easy. I didn't have to talk to anyone. I didn't have to call anyone. I just got what I needed. It was that side of this process was really good. So I go, we talk. I'm there for 10 minutes, and he writes a prescription, sends it in. Awesome. I was also was able to change where my prescriptions are filled from the portal, which was great too. I didn't have to tell him, hey, I want to get because like the place where I was getting my prescriptions filled was kind of less than, they weren't the best. So the company that manages prescriptions has an app. I was like looking at the app because I was like, wanting to see, okay, it's processing. It was submitted last Friday. It's processing. Yesterday, I see it processing all day, and I'm like, cool. Then this morning, I look at it again because like I'm waiting to see when it's going to ship, because I did a thing where they would ship it to me, and also I wanted to see how much it was going to cost. And it says, hey, there's, it says, I can't remember exactly what the wording was, but I could tell that it was no longer processing, and it was in a place where it's like, okay, something needs to be done. So I called them, and they're like, oh, yeah, we need a prior authorization. Okay, what's prior authorization? Well, you're just going to have to wait for your doctor to complete that. I was like, well, do I need to call him to let him know that the prior authorization is needed, or have you electronically or verbally let them know? I don't know, is the answer I get. I was like, well, who does know? I will find out. And like at one point, like this whole conversation that I had today took about an hour. And I finally get to somebody who knows something about prior authorizations, and they're like, yeah, you got to do like you have to diet for 3 months, like try to lose weight by dieting. I was like, well, I've done that for in my head. It's not what I said, but this is what I'm thinking, and it's what I'm feeling. And it's like for the past 20 years, I've been trying to do something like that, on and off. So, I kind of already know what the outcome of that's going to be. You're just delaying what I'm looking for 3 months and so forth. And on top of that, I was like, why, when I called the first time and asked these questions, that nobody said something to me? Like, that's kind of the thing that's been the most frustrating. And, it's just because there's a whole shit ton of people whose job it is to basically not be trained or not have any sort of like formal training and just field calls and make people feel good until it's time to, hit your head against a brick wall.
There's so much out of that story.
You what?
There's so much out of that story.
Yeah.
So I want to break it into two pieces. One, I have almost never had a bad experience trying to work with a physician's office, regardless of what it's for, whether it's for me, whether it's from family member. That end of the spectrum is almost always a pleasant experience, almost always helpful. There are going to be times where you get less than stellar care, but you can change physicians most of the time or whatever. Like it's a lot easier to rectify problems on that end of the spectrum. And I wanted to start with that caveat because I've had a couple of experiences lately with insurance in general that have made me similarly frustrated, though for slightly different reasons. I actually, before I get into that, because I have a follow-up question. If they just needed prior authorization that you had to diet for 3 months, couldn't your doctor just say you've been dieting for 3 months? Like, is there something in that transaction that...
I'll find out when I talk to my doctor.
Okay.
Because he asked me to come back in.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, genuinely curious because, it's the kind of thing that I know my physicians would just have a follow-up conversation, make sure that it's something that they could reasonably answer with certainty and call it a day.
Yeah, so like hopefully when I talk to my physician, I can say yes, and maybe he'll allow me to qualify, and I don't have to wait 3 months or whatever. So we'll see. That's yet to be determined.
I know a lot of that depends on the length of time that you've had a relationship and how well your relationship is with the physician. Like if they know you, or if it's just kind of a I see you once in a while thing.
It's like I started going to him in 2011, and I stopped going to anyone for a certain amount of time, especially during the pandemic. And I started going back in 2020, end of 2022. I went back to see him, like to start back, because like I went to someone in 2021, and I just didn't like the care that I got from this person, and I remember telling him, I was like, hey, I went somewhere else and didn't like what, I was like, you've been the best doctor I've had in this city. So I'm only hurting myself by not coming in to visit you. So, and I'd see him at the gym too. Like, it's not like, when I, in the before times when I went to Lifetime, I'd see him there. So it's like, I feel like, as good a relationship you can have with your doctor who you see once a year maybe. But like I've been to visit him 4 times in the past year and a half just for various things. So I feel like maybe we can, I don't know. I'll see how that conversation goes.
Yeah. And I mean, it was just same kind of thing that like all my experiences on that side of the healthcare conundrum and machine have generally been positive. So that was the follow-up question. The other piece of it, the just fucked up state of healthcare in the United States in general, like this is problematic in so many different ways. Yes, what you're talking about is very much gatekeeping behavior. But at the same time, it's almost like they've let some machine develop algorithms for business and nobody knows what those algorithms are. And so they can't answer them either, which is also problematic.
Yes.
It hasn't been that terribly long ago. I don't remember the exact specifics of what I had issue with, but what it came down to is I had a couple of different medical appointments for my son for various things, and they were from different places, and one got billed and then the other one got billed, and there was like an odd difference in the amounts and how there were, like in the breakdown, it was talking about calculations and negotiations and everything else. And I thought I had a fairly simple question. My question was, you say that I'm responsible for this amount here, and you say I'm responsible for this amount here, and I want to know how you determine that. Simple enough, right? Is it percentage based? Is it, type of visit? What? And so I called in and said, I'm just confused about what I'm being told is my responsibility based on coverage and where we're at. And I would like to know how this is determined. What makes it billable for this amount as opposed to this other one? And there was a good 20 minutes of talking about how there's not a clear answer to that because of the way that it's done with how it's coded and what and type of visit and everything else. And said, look, I know where you're coming from and I get that, but that's not what I'm asking here. I'm asking why on this one, once the deductible is met, it's not being paid at this percentage and everything else according to the terms, and this one doesn't actually seem to be either. And on both of these, you've got another line item with an adjustment, and I don't know why that's there, and I want some explanation. And it was an hour on the phone of repeatedly saying, I can't, the representative repeatedly saying, I don't know, I can't give you that information, and me asking, okay, well, who can? Nobody can. Well, that's not true. Somebody can, or I don't have to pay it because you can't tell me why I'm responsible for it. And after it went that way for a while, I finally got escalated to somebody else. And then once I got escalated to them, you could still tell there wasn't actually a good answer, but it was a more satisfactory answer than what I had been getting. And I don't remember the specifics of that one either, but it was explained in a way that made more sense about why they did not have a specific answer, because there wasn't a chart available of like what this code means and how it's been negotiated between all the different entities involved. But even then, the fact that it's not just a clear answer illustrates part of the just fundamental problem with the healthcare industry in the States.
Yeah, the fact that there's a statement called, well, we negotiated prices like this. The fact that that's even a thing.
Yeah.
It's.
And I even told the representatives, I said, look, I'm not trying to give you a hard time and make it difficult, but if you can't explain this, I'm not going to pay it. And so I just need someone who can explain it.
Right. It's like, if you can't explain to me why I owe you this much money, then why would you expect me to pay you the money?
Right.
So it's just...
And at this point, I kind of wish I remembered the details, because I'm sure it was something that I could probably now answer based on trying to figure it out at the time. But at the time, the way things were worded and the available materials I had, it didn't explain it in a way where I understood some of the billing nuances between how someone in an office codes something and how insurance tracks it and everything else. Even though I've been exposed to it years past, none of it clicked when I was looking at it.
One of the things that comes to mind is the last time I had a colonoscopy, they said X amount of money is going to be due before they put you under, before they do anything. You walk in, you sign in, they're going to say, we need this much money from you right now before, or you don't progress until you pay this much money. How the hell do they know exactly what I need to pay them before I go in there? And then, if I call my insurance company, they don't.
Yeah.
I'm just like, I'm sure I'm sure there's an explanation as to why that is, but that's whatever explanation it is, it's bullshit.
Well, we've talked about it plenty of times, so I don't want to rehash the whole healthcare in this country being horrid by almost every conceivable standard. But the the way you described the gatekeeping aspect, that's the piece that I kind of wanted to focus more in on, because it's interesting that the insurance companies are doing the same thing. They're just doing it in a way, they're partially to blame for why it's happening in the first place, or almost fully to blame in many instances. But
honestly, any tier 1 customer service anywhere are the gatekeepers.
Well, that's where I was going with it, is that it's interesting that in your case, the primary problem was the lack of really interested and invested representatives trying to assist, and just people who were being paid to answer and listen to people on the phone, just basic customer service people.
Right.
With the insurance company, I at least had somebody who supposedly knew a decent bit about what they were doing, but they were intentionally not explaining something. And I have no doubt that the representative did not know the answer to the question I was asking. And it wasn't so much that lack of knowledge or lack of investment necessarily from the company perspective, but it was the lack of carrying an investment in my issue to attempt to help move it forward, which is the exact same basic premise for gatekeeping in general. And it exists at every level when you're talking about obfuscating billing practices, or call service reps, of course, easily fit that category. The insurance company, as it exists as a whole, serves no other purpose than to make determinations on whether or not you get whatever you're asking for. Not to mention, in many cases, denying claims for no apparent or readily available reason. It's annoying, but gatekeeping for the sake of increasing the business's profits, and that's it.
Right. Because at the end of the day, it means that, there's a few things, there's a few aspects to it that is beneficial for the bottom line. And that is, one, you're reducing liability by putting, somebody who answers the phone who doesn't know how to answer your question, and who is told to answer your question in a particular way, reduces liability. And it also reduces costs, because then now this person doesn't have to have a specific type of training, or the people that do have the training that to answer your question, you don't have to have as many of them hired, so that because we just need someone who can answer, like a warm body to answer the phone, to give you just satisfactory enough of an answer to not have to talk to somebody who we pay more and have less of.
It's the age-old skilled and unskilled labor debate.
Right.
I was thinking about it as well. Can you think of anything that you would say is actually beneficial from the involvement of an insurance company?
I was sitting here thinking, I was like, having insurance is like, it's like the worst thing. It's like the worst thing in the world. And the only thing that's worse than having insurance is not having insurance.
I do agree. But I only agree in an environment where the insurance companies exist.
In this country.
Right. Because I can't help but think that, let's just say for this argument, insurance companies did not exist. Healthcare's...
Hey, are you there? I lost you for a second.
Okay. Let's just say, for the sake of discussion, we're in an environment where insurance companies don't exist. And so whatever form that took to get to that point, medical costs are regulated in some way, shape, fashion, or form without the involvement of an intermediary. Like, I know that right now they talk about insurance being beneficial because we live in a country where healthcare costs are not regulated, not to an extent that would maintain any semblance of. We live in a free market economy.
So, well, not just that, but like, okay, so healthcare costs money for sure.
Yes.
It costs, and it's not cheap, and it's not something you want to scrimp on. You don't want, if you can help it, you don't want the bargain basement price healthcare. You want good healthcare. And, you can have good healthcare and it not be terribly expensive. The problem is that in this country, we've introduced healthcare for profit. These are healthcare is a for-profit industry. And that's our biggest problem.
Right. Which goes along with if it were regulated to the point where it is either not for profit or not for more than X percentage profit to, take your pick on how it gets done. That's where I was intentionally vague. But meaning that the insurance companies did not serve a purpose. So even if you could say that under the current scheme, insurance companies are somewhat beneficial because of the negotiations that we referenced earlier, you take that argument completely out the window if the negotiation piece isn't necessary.
Right.
And that's the only thing I can think of where insurance companies are beneficial, and it's only because healthcare is a for-profit industry.
Well, there's also, I was thinking about that, and, I was thinking negotiation it's like, why are we even talking about having to negotiate? But, that's, there are times and places for negotiation. But, if you look at a country that has, or I'd rather say that healthcare negotiation in this country is kind of a joke. So, looking at a country like, I remember this example of England or the UK, and they have, well, first, this works better if you have a functioning government, which this country does not have that. So there's that. But I don't know if you have to have a fully functioning government, but you have to have at least the part of the government that is handling healthcare needs to be functioning, well. And they have an incredibly powerful negotiating tool, which is we are the sole provider of healthcare in this nation. So, for example, I don't know how many major health insurance providers there are in this country. I can think of, half a dozen off the top of my head. So there's that. And they're all doing their negotiating with the various healthcare providers and so forth. And that's how it is. But the example that I remember hearing about was, hey, you know what? In the UK, if you need a hip replacement, well, we need to find someone that, the government isn't going to open factories that manufacture replacement hips. No, they're going to find a healthcare company that does do that. And guess what? Every hip replacement in this country is going to be through this particular manufacturer. I'm sure there are some deals where it's like, well, these are, we have two manufacturers of hips or whatever, the left and the right. The point being is, that was a joke, but the point, it made me think of like how Apple was, buying chips from TSMC and Qualcomm, I think, I can't, whatever. Anyway, but it's like you're going to have like far fewer manufacturers of hips, and you're going to be able to demand the highest quality product for the lowest price that is reasonable, because they are going to be the only customer of hips, replacement hips in the country. The United Kingdom's government was the only customer for hip replacements, because they covered all of them. And so it's going to be a damn good hip replacement, and it's going to be at a good price. And that's the negotiating power that the government has when they are providing healthcare.
On top of that, if you have a functioning government, they can take it a step further and say, uh, well, either we're going to come to an agreement or we're going to perform some legislative act that's going to
Yes.
say if you want to do business in this country, you're going to meet this agreement.
Right. Well, it's why the European Union gets. I mean, the European Union has a big enough GDP that they can. They told China, "Hey, we're not going. This is a little bit off topic, but we're not going to buy any products, any plastic products that have this particular toxin in it." And what did Chinese manufacturers do? Well, they found a way to manufacture plastic the way that manufacture plastic to meet the needs that they need and meet the criteria that they need that does not have this toxin in it any longer, because they had a large enough customer demand it. It was a law passed in the European Union banning this particular plastic with this type of toxin in it. So because it's a somewhat better functioning government. So there's a lot of power in healthcare. And the thing is, it's like there's so many Americans that think that the United States has the best healthcare in the world. And it's like, we have like the worst healthcare of developed countries. Like,
yeah, I think they confuse a lot of times the level of R&D and the level of actual care.
Right. So,
because I would certainly argue that we have some of the best R&D in the world.
But those two things are mutually exclusive.
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't say they're mutually exclusive. They're completely irrelevant to each other.
Right.
Because I don't think, based on other factors in general, the fact that a lot of people still want to make their way to America for whatever reason, semi tongue-in-cheek.
Yeah.
But I don't think, even if we did, let's just say we went to a non-for-profit style of healthcare, I don't think we would lose our place as one of the best R&D centers in general. And it's because of the freedom of being able to explore and create and have ideas. And you'll always have people who find that freedom compelling, and compelling enough to continue to work here as opposed to relocating to many other places. I would say that I wouldn't be hard-pressed to argue that we have the best, because I don't think any one country has the best R&D in the world. I think it depends a lot on what fields you're talking about and
right.
A bunch of other factors. And I don't know that I would put us at the best when it comes to general healthcare R&D. I would say we probably are on the high end for pharmaceutical R&D because of the way pharmaceutical companies are allowed to operate here, with the insurance companies kind of playing another role in that regard.
Well, it's
trying not to specifically slam the insurance companies for hiking up R&D costs is what it was coming down to.
I was just going to say it. I think a lot has to do with the fact that corporate profits are socialized and corporate failures are socialized and corporate profits are privatized. There's money that goes in to allow pharmaceutical companies to do this research, and then they recoup on the backs of the citizens. So I may be a little bit wrong. I may be a little bit jaded there, but
the problem is that even if you aren't, I am. So I have no alternative attempt to try to spin that, because to me that's exactly what's happening, which actually makes it funny that not to completely segue into something else, but I think it's related. I think this frustration and annoyance at healthcare is directly derived from general annoyances surrounding everything that you would expect to be annoyed by as a member of Gen X. And other generations. Like, I don't want to necessarily put it just in Gen X's domain, but the reason I specifically mention it is because of the docuseries that I sent you. I've watched 3 of the episodes so far, and it's been funny how a lot of the snippets and themes are things that's like, yeah, actually, I can't fault that, or I don't disagree with that, or things that I have not consciously thought of in a long time. And I know they're there because I've had similar discussions many times. And it's just kind of funny reflecting on some of those things and where I am with some of my other frustrations and how much of it is very much in line with generational stereotypes.
Yeah, I see that.
And so frustration at healthcare and all is just another one on the list.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. At the end of the day, the reason this country does not have government funded healthcare, because it's not hard. 32 of the 33 countries that are developed countries in this world have figured out how to provide government healthcare. The reason we don't is, like I said, I mentioned earlier, you need a somewhat functioning government for that, and 2, it's to keep healthcare out of the hands of people with color.
I mean, all right, so I agree, but I also have a counter argument to that, because I don't think it's restricted to people of color. I think it's restricted to anybody who doesn't fit the traditional white male, because I think it targets women just as grossly as it targets people of color.
I think so too. Let me rephrase it. Absolutely does. When you can get boner pills the way, for how prolific boner pills are, and women's healthcare is not quite as accessible. It's telling. It's telling that, yeah.
And I do think that it's slightly more than just that too. As I think about it in general,
mm-hmm.
I think it also is targeted toward the traditional rural, uneducated, or less educated, maybe is a better way to put it.
Less formally, let's say less formally educated, because I don't want to.
Yeah, and I'm. Well, you could tell I was struggling with how I would actually classify it, because I have 2 or 3 different groups that I can picture in my head, and they're very different in general. But the one theme they share in common is socioeconomic status is not necessarily high, and they do not have access to the ease of healthcare that other people have access to. And so if there are multiple groups that fit that category, it's kind of tough to pick one, or kind of tough to describe it in a way that encompasses them all without it sounding disingenuous or disingenuous.
Yeah.
Because I do think there are a number of less privileged, just rural white men that also fit that category as a target.
Yeah.
It's just nowhere near as targeted and prolific.
I think they sort of fall into that group accidentally.
Kind of as a byproduct,
as a byproduct.
And but it's still targeting, to an extent, that same group, specifically because it poses a threat to the maintaining of power by the others, by the traditional elite.
Yes. We have a number of different ways set up for you to get in touch with us to provide feedback, ask questions, or just comment in about something we've discussed.
You can hit us up on Twitter or Instagram at untitled_hosts, or shoot an email over to untitled.hosts@gmail.com.
Or get in touch directly with Jesse at jthart.com, or get in touch with me, John, via telepathy.
If you would like to support our work or are interested in listening to our new after show feed, head over to patreon.com/theUntitledPodcast and take a look at the options we have set up.
Thank you for listening.
We hope you've enjoyed the show.
And we hope to connect with more of you as we continue this journey.
That's a wrap.